our mind from best in the world to best for the world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.
Right. Hello, my name is Andreas Onofors. I am an associate professor in the history of sciences and ideas, and I've been invited to talk at this event on the subject of world citizenship, human responsibility for the whole. I'm going to start with a personal anecdote and then turn into the core subject of my topic, cosmopolitanism, and what we as humans can do in developing our responsibility for the whole. I grew up as a Swede in Germany when my 21st birthday approached. A letter arrived from the Swedish embassy, at that time still in Bonn, where I was informed that in order to keep my citizenship, I had to move my address to Sweden or being conscribed to the armed forces. At the same time, I was contacted by the German authorities because Sweden was still not a member of the European Union, and even our membership in the EEA did not imply that we sometimes were treated as completely third country aliens. The corridor at the police headquarters in Trier, where I lived, and there the aliens department was located, was packed with Russian Germans, ancestors to those Russians which centuries ago had migrated from different German territories to the Russian Empire, and now, after the fall of communism, had returned to Germany with more or less tangible connections to the language, country, and identity. After having waited for a long time together with the Russians, a bureaucrat received me and solemnly declared that I was offered the German citizenship. Only seconds after, I replied that I was grateful for the offer, but that I most likely would decline it. The lady, who day after day was talking to people who had not grown up in Germany, who did not talk the language, but in their Soviet passports or birth certificates could show that they were registered as Niemiec, which means German, and therefore was more or less of the German people, pulled herself together, but was close to explosion. With a gesture pointing at the people flocking outside her door, she had me to understand that I really should reconsider. Everyone outside does really want to become German citizens, and you just want to decline the offer? Yes, I replied, I think so, and I left her office. A few days later I returned the decline definitely to her, while she pretended almost not to notice me, meticulously studying the Russian files in front of her. While I was biking home this mild spring day, through the city in which Christianity turned into Roman state religion, where Karl Marx was born and Jean-Paul Sartre was a prisoner of war, I was filled of some kind of inner satisfaction. Statelessness, world citizenship. How close weren't they to me in real terms? If I hadn't replied upon the letter from the embassy and at the same time letting the Russians become Germans without joining them, wasn't it extremely liberating to be able to claim, I do not belong to any state. I am only a cosmopolitan. The world and the city are my home, as the Pope declares, urbi et orbi, for the city as much as for the world. Filled with such thoughts, I passed by cherry trees and syringa and discussed the matter over the next weeks with my friends of a huge amount of glasses of wine from the region. a historically contested border region between France, Germany, and the Benelux countries. But maybe I was just ahead of my time. There were no direct trains between Trier and Luxembourg yet. Travelers had to exit in a tiny spot called Wasserbillig in order to change to French-built rail cars from the 60s. There was no Öresund bridge yet, and being Swedish, you were taken aside in Dover in the same quota group as Koreans, Zambians, or space aliens. There was also no Schengen Treaty, by the way named after an even more insignificant spot close to Wasserbillig, a treaty that allows us to experience a little bit of Immanuel Kant's cosmopolitan hospitality, while the refugee vessels sink outside Fortress Europe. But Andreas warned my friends, to be stateless maybe sounds cool, you have no obligations, but you also do not have any rights, not anywhere. The only counter-argument I could come up with was that world citizenship is the only morally justifiable citizenship that there is. Just as the Romans who walked the streets of our town 2 millennia ago, just like their Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who said that reason creates one single human moral community, I wanted to imagine that there only was one radius for the world, orbus, and just one relationship between point and circle, that of the citizen, civis Romanus sum, I am a Roman citizen, to be embraced by a civilizational community of rights. This is, by the way, the meaning of Kennedy's words, Ich bin ein Berliner. I am a citizen of Berlin, which he expressed just opposite of the Berlin Wall. With other words, I can embrace a standpoint at whatever place of the globe where freedom is kicked with dirty boots, because I am embraced by the circle. This is of course easier said than actually done. Where to apply for a world citizenship beyond it being a philosophical concept, a dream, an idea that can fire the imagination of a 20-year-old. To make a long story short, and to cut down a story that would lead through a courtroom in Namibia, I made a pragmatic choice, a so-called realistic choice, while at the same time being the choice of my heart. I had the national state place a gun in my hand and deserved my Swedish citizenship. However proud of the number 9 and the last 4 digits of my social security number, which indicates clearly that I am born abroad. Now it appears as if world citizenship is further away than 30 years ago, when this entire episode unfolded. Or is it? Maybe it's even closer than ever since 30 years. The role of the United Nations as an intergovernmental organization is challenged by a number of factors. Cosmopolitan rights and the idea of world citizenship in the 21st century has to challenge the intergovernmental order as such, the so-called Westphalian concept. A concept named after the negotiating signatory powers who in 1648 put their seals under one of the most comprehensive peace treaties in the history of humanity. Europe was ridden by a prolonged 30 years war, fueled by interreligious hate, great power games and processes of state formation that had not yet been settled. If we imagine the war in Syria lasting for 30 years, we understand the level of brutality, violence, and frustration that must have distressed people on the continent. The peace treaty demanded years of negotiation, which shaped the basis for the international order as we still know it today. Individual states are the basis, and individual states decide upon the frames of how our world is shaped. But this relationship is since a while exposed to stress and paradoxes. Where the number of independent national states and territories striving for nationhood is constantly growing, real sovereignty, which arguably is there and end in themselves, diminishes. The more members there are in the international community, the more the value of membership is eroded. Independence and capacity to self-defense, two cherished values of the United Nations system, is challenged by globalization. Forces surpassing the collaboration of states and moving beyond the historical role of the state. These powers are contradictory. They can lead to more universal unity, for instance on the level of economy and culture, while they also might occasion counter-reactions and fragmentation, such as expressed in religious and national fundamentalism and terrorism. All these phenomena have accelerated processes like migration, culture encounters and hybridization, which are creative intermixtures of culture, but they have likewise supported the establishment of a non-territorial network-based political activism from everything between G20 protests to Al-Qaeda. Ecological challenges assume global proportions with complex relationships between causes and effects that far go beyond individual states or continents. And which is something we experience right now in our contemporary COVID crisis. Thus, globalization has therefore also awakened an old dream, that of cosmopolitanism or world citizenship. As a reaction upon the increasing and accelerating contact between the people of the globe, and as a reaction against to let the forces of the free market dominate the process, many thinkers returned after 1990 to the concept of cosmopolitanism, to at the same time be a citizen in the dot, the place, or the city, and the surrounding, the orbit, the world, or cosmos. I will just make a drawing to explain this concept. So what I've been drawing on the table is a very simple drawing, which is the cosmos, or that surrounds us, and the polis, which is the Greek name for the city or the place. By the history of philosophy, the word was placed into the mouth of Diogenes of Sinope, who was asked about his origin, and he, as it has been said, answered, "I'm a cosmopolites. I'm from a city," so the nucleus of the Greek political community, that embraces everything, cosmos. So I am a citizen of the world, from everywhere and from nowhere, which is a unification of the order of nature and the order of man. And it's the same Diogenes that is said to have answered the most powerful person of that period, the ruler of an empire, Alexander the Great, when Alexander approached Diogenes and asked him what he could do for him. Please step out of the sun. So the cosmopolitan has in the following Diogenes either been interpreted as a little bit eccentric person, almost like an egoistic individualist who lives for himself, on distance from the social community and the political power, not at home anywhere, or like an ego trip consumer of high culture, a dandy who lives a jet-set life between shopping malls and airport lounges anywhere around the globe. But it is with Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who I mentioned before, the term became to express a community of law. Aurelius was a Stoicist, and he said that reason could be understood by all human beings, and therefore create the foundation for an all-embracing global human morality that in itself could place the basis for a common law. All human beings could, by the power of their own reason, be seen as citizens of the same state. The entire globe could create one unity. Thus, citizenship could be embraced by all human beings on the basis of their rationality and with other words, the law was open for everyone. Of course, if it only would be that easy. Use your reason and you become a world citizen. The Roman Empire was destroyed by the forces of polarization and fragmentation. The community of law that was extended from England to Minor Asia or from Egypt to the Rhine was destroyed to the advantage of pure random ideas and traditions. The right of the individual, of the human being, was reduced to and was only based upon the membership in the people. Stoicism, the golden measure, the philosophy of the golden measure of virtue and of balance, developed an idea about that the human being has a double identity, a personal identity and a universal identity, where, following Aristotle, it also was a part to engage in an unselfish political moral for the best of the whole. And it was the Catholic Church that inherited the Roman state philosophy about the all-embracing circle of community, part in which you can be part in once you are believing in the entire system. But a political world citizenship was not developed in its aftermath. The process of change, from which people turned from subjects to patriots and later on citizens in the period 1500 to 1800, was also the one that developed the idea of specific citizen rights, political rights and general human rights. The problem is, and was and is, that the political philosophy of the West not has been able to decouple the issue of rights from membership in a specific political community, for instance, a state or a nation. And on the other side, the state and the nation demands a forced membership to legitimize its importance and also to secure its income. And this was exactly what my friends told me when I was dreaming about statelessness and world citizenship in the beginning of the 1990s. You have no duties, but you have neither any rights, not at any place, and never. So is it possible to find a solution upon this paradox that seems to be a part of the core of political philosophy? How is it possible to unite the thought of being a global political subject, a dot on the earth, that is encapsulated by the circle of cosmopolitan right? Is it possible to draw a line to erect a direct link between them without involving the meso level of the state as we know it today? In a certain sense, we are on the way there. For instance, the European Union, and let us not forget it, we have a double citizenship with double rights. We have citizenship of the European Union and we have a citizenship of the individual member state. The citizenship of the Union is not that strong, but it builds upon the idea of classical cosmopolitanism to belong to the other and to the all-embracing community at the same time. And in turn, upon the idea of Immanuel Kant and his idea of a perpetual peace and a cosmopolitan law. The European Union is an example how rights have been expanded to a larger circle through supranational institutionalization. The citizenship in the Union is growing in the same way as its institutions grow, that not any longer represent the smallest unit, but the smallest common denominator between those units. But is it possible to transport this concept to a global level? In principle, there is nothing that would be a problem in imagining that such an order could be established. And different interest groups already are working to establish a world government and a world citizenship as a real alternative. And that is something I'm going to talk about tomorrow when I will be talking about the book called A World Parliament, Governance and Democracy in the 21st Century, which is an initiative called We the Peoples that wants to substitute the existence of the intergovernmental organization, the United Nations, with levels of global democracy in which we all can take part in. But another way to look at the issue is to say that real world citizenship doesn't need to wait for the creation of formal structures, but takes the political activism of each citizen as its point of departure. That means that a citizen becomes a citizen by claiming and exercising his or her positive political rights, protected by his negative and positive human rights. With other words, we don't need an institution that turns me or you into a world citizen, but this world citizenship is created by myself in the very moment I act politically on a global level, and I take place as an actor, for instance, in the transnational civil society. The most radical interpretation of cosmopolitan rights places these rights in the hands of the individual. The rights do not exist by the force of supranational institutions or an abstract catalogue that can be abused of the powerful in order to suppress the poor, or as something that only serves as a facade for international politics. But the rights exist only in the moment somebody consciously or intentionally makes a claim that these rights exist. And such a viewpoint places the responsibility radically upon the individual, the person, the human being, the dot that has to make an active use of the rights, which are in fact the circle that surround him. This places also the responsibility upon us to take up world citizenship as a perpetual and processual recreation. We cannot be happy with the General Declaration of Human Rights that was already adopted more than 200 years ago, but we need permanently to conquer and to create and to claim our rights here, locally, and at the same time globally. And how do you do that? For instance, by expressing them, by that what we call performance. Only by doing that we can draw a straight line between those words that already in 1737 were expressed in a group of European philanthropists in Paris and our own time. And I quote, "Human beings are not defined by the language they talk, the clothes they carry, the countries in which they live, or which kind of dignities they have been given. The entire world is a great republic, where each nation is a family, and each individual a child." Only by keeping this dream, we give the ideal life that the unification of nations leads to develop political community that we all can be parts in. Thank you so much.
world we're now living in. We are competing in. We are repeating in. We are believing in. It's time for us to shift our mind from best in the world to best for the world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.